Hello, hello, and welcome to the Mindset Bloomcast with Mallory. I am your host, Mallory McGary, and I am the CEO and founder of Beautifully Blooming. You can find me at beautifullyblooming.com or email me at mallory@beautifullyblooming.com. You are listening to the WGSN-DB Going Solo Network, radio, TV, and podcast, the number one internet talk network. I'm so happy to have you here. This is a great day for me. I have done some really good research on this topic, and it is something that has hit me really hard, actually. I feel like every episode that we talk about, there's something that has hit me and brought to pass the actualness of the episode. But this week we are talking about self-worth and how important that is in just our everyday life and what it goes for through different phases of our life, how it grows, how it kind of goes through a cycle, ups and downs, and then just how to building that foundation. And then we're going to talk about a couple of other things that seem to tie into it really well, of confidence, self-confidence, and self-respect. So I'm going to give you a little bit of background, as usual, of how this topic came to be. So I am currently mid-launch of my big program that I'm launching. It's called Momdenity. It's for moms who are getting lost in the title of motherhood, feel anxious, overwhelmed, kind of have forgotten who they are, and it helps them move to a life of clarity and bliss and being able to shed mom guilt. So that's the basis of my program, and I'm going through this mid-launch of it and have posted some things on my Instagram and done different uh, interviews and postings of being interviewed and articles for it. And I have received good feedback. Excuse me. I've received not great feedback, and then I've received like the middle. And um, as always, I'm not everybody's not my cup of tea. I'm not everybody's cup of tea. I get it. But as I kind of have gone through this launching process, that sometimes I put a lot of value on the way that people were responding. I've put this all this work and effort into this program. I've put the energy behind it. I've put the energy into launching it. I've put a lot of countless hours into making sure that it's something that is sustainable and works for moms of all types, right? Stay at home moms, working moms, moms to be, whatever that looks like. I put a lot of research into that as well. And so when I put it out to the world, kind of wrapped it up in its beautiful little package and put it out to the world, that not having the moments of like, oh, okay, I'm interested. My calendar did not fill up. I'll be completely transparent. We've talked about that a lot in these episodes, but my calendar didn't just fill up. My um it's still picking up pace in enrollments. It didn't just like change overnight. And I kind of looked at it for a minute, took a step back one time, and I after I posted something and it didn't quite go or land the way I wanted it to, and had this moment of, "Oh my gosh, I am so terrible. I am not the greatest person because I've put this out there into the world. Nobody cares for it. I'm going the wrong path." Just started that whole self-degradation spiral. And I had to stop and pause for a moment, look in the mirror, and kind of proverbially grab my shirt collar and be like, "Girl, it's fine. Everything will come. Like, you're not a terrible person. You're putting something out into the world that's new. And it's still kind of going through its birthing process. It's still like learning how to walk, it's learning how to crawl. If my course were a human, but we're still in that phase of it's still like getting used to the world, and the world's still getting used to it being something that's there and being brought to their attention. So with that, I started to be like, oh, right. Like, I'm still an amazing person. I still have really good content. I'm still going to deliver to my audience that I have and my growing audience, making sure that they get value and still growing that and becoming more confident in my own self as I'm putting out this brand new program. So in all transparency, that's where I sit, that's where I'm at. But so it got me down this path of self-worth and how important it is to think about it as not only where we've been, but where you are now and how to improve it and make it better no matter what phase you're at, whether it's a low, mid, high, just making it somewhat better than what it could be before because you maybe really have really high self-esteem in social situations, but you may have really low self-esteem when it comes to relationships and having friends, partners, whatever that looks like as a relationship, it could be you could be really uncomfortable in those. So also, a second aside to that, that also just spurred this a little bit further was into the self-confidence realm was that I went on a vacation with me and just my littles. My husband had work projects, so he stayed home, but it was really busted me out of my shell and into something that was really uncomfortable for me that I'd never done before. Two, I knew I could do it, but I didn't think I could do it at the same time. That fear creeped in and was like, "You don't got this. This is gonna be terrible." And just people's opinions and judgment of what I think that they're thinking about me, which isn't actually true, right? What my brain is telling me that they're thinking like, "Oh, you've bitten off more than you could chew. You've got a lot to handle with 2 kids. Like, we don't have time to wait for you to do all of these things." Type of thing that it just kind of started to eat away at me a little bit. And that goes for any area of your life. It can go for uh, my business as well, a business. It can go for relationships. It could go for academics. It could go for a professional. It can go anywhere. That's the importance of self esteem is to know, number one, that it belongs, it's very divided. It's divided in between different areas. You feel more confident in one place than another. That sometimes it's easier to function in a place that we find comfortable and that we're good at rather than starting to build on those skills that maybe not be our strong point in that. So, we're going to start this episode after my stories a little bit on delving into a little bit more of self esteem. And then we're going to talk about self confidence. And then last, we're going to talk about self respect because all three of those tie in together into one beautiful little package into helping us feel elevated to that next level. It helps us level up. So, as the usual, I went straight to the dictionary because I all words have different meanings to everybody. So, this is something that anybody can find in the dictionary, and it's a standard definition. So, self worth is also interchangeable with self esteem. So, we're going to base it off of self esteem, which the definition of self esteem is confidence in one's own worth or abilities and one's own self respect. So, think about that for a minute. Mario, where on a scale of 1 to 10 right now would you rate your own self esteem? Maybe you're a 2, maybe you're a 5. Just overall, maybe you're a 10, wherever that sits, just as a general blanket statement, right? Find that average of all different areas of your life. So think about this. This is something I found interesting. I found it on Psychology Today that there are 4 parts that make up a person's self-esteem. And part 1 is your self-confidence, which is the feeling of security. And that is just the base foundation. And it's where it starts when you're little. If you have that loving family and you're getting that feedback from your family and your needs are being met, it's where how our self-esteem starts to develop. that it's where we feel secure. So if you think about that, think about your childhood, like, and like where you were in self-esteem. For me, my childhood was awesome. I don't think I ever questioned um any good or bad. I f- I felt like as a kid I was just very much like I'm on top of the world. I'm going to conquer everything. I remember being 7 years old and writing down a list of businesses I wanted to own and be. I wanted to be an interior designer and putting sapphires on people's wall because that seemed cool. um, I also wanted to be a stewardess to travel the globe. Um, wanted to be like an archaeologist and find all the historical things. I wanted to be Cleopatra technically, in that I wanted to have some sort of royal moment. Wherever that royalty came from, I wanted to have some sort of princess or lady or a lady in waiting type of title in there. And they were all combined in one. It was like one really great business venture. And if people questioned it, it would never shoot me down. I would always be like, yeah, this is it. This is what I'm doing. And I think just over time, as going through experiences, going through life, that it tore that down a little bit, tore down that self-confidence I had, that I could do whatever I wanted, that I could be really whatever I wanted, that I could achieve anything that I set my mind to, that somehow this wide world of vastness of open possibilities started to form into this box, and this things that were realistic and attainable because they were tangible and I could touch them, and dreaming outside of that box was something that seemed just like, oh girl, you that's way too far out of your box. You can't think that far. um Jumping back to long episodes ago about talking about how fear is there, fear has a voice, but not a vote. And um, it was things just started to kind of compartmentalize. And I don't think it was probably until about 6 years ago that I really realized that that little kid in me was right. That little girl, if I looked at her through my eyes now and I saw her and was talking to her, that the vastness is still there. It's just a different sort of vastness, but it's still there and I can still go for all those. So my I guess box started to get a little bit bigger in that. So finding that foundation and that self-esteem, finding where you're comfortable, where you feel secure, finding that safe space. Maybe that safe space is with your family. Maybe that safe space is with your spouse or your partner. Maybe that safe space is with your friends. Wherever that is, find that safe space, because that safe space is what's going to be the anchors in holding you into that self-esteem when you start to question and say, "Oh, I don't know how I feel." You can anchor yourself in knowing that these people around you you're getting your needs met from them. They love you, they support you, and that's going to keep developing over a lot of time. So part 1 is self-confident, is that self-confidence feeling of security. Step 2 is your identity. So identity can be defined in a lot of different ways. You can have a professional identity, you can have a personal identity, you can have an academic identity. Um, it's also multifaceted, as in self-esteem, but it is the knowledge you have of yourself. So we gain that knowledge by learning, experimenting, getting feedback, trial and error. Um, we come to identify our characteristics, our core beliefs, our whatever your core, what I call your core compass, whatever is guiding you in your life, how you make decisions, those core things that just make up your being, your abilities, what you are really good at, what you struggle with, where you're kind of mediocre at, and maybe one way or the other can increase those. What really needs you have, what what fulfills you, what you need, and then your feelings, how to process your feelings, how to describe your feelings. My version of angry is not necessarily my husband's version of angry, and my version of frustrated is not necessarily his version of frustrated, or my version of happy is not his same version of happy. And we process our feelings differently. And that's part of owning into your identity of how do you pick an emotion or pick a need and say, this is what I need. This doesn't serve me. This is not something that is part of making me up who I am in that. It helps define those characteristics of what, how you want to be seen in the world is kind of the best way I like to put it is what do you want people to know about you? What is that first impression? Think about the first impression that you leave and how that grows, and different characteristics also form over time. So that comes from the trial and error that maybe later on down the road you could find you have a talent and a skill for something that you maybe necessarily didn't even know that existed when you were younger, in your younger years. So it helps process through your identity. Self-esteem comes from how comfortable really you feel in your own skin is kind of the best way I describe it. Then number 3 is a feeling of belonging. Now I'm going to hit on this for just a minute, just because this is something that I feel is very rampant in the past little bit, and probably more so in the space, the mom space I'm in, that I see it a lot of. You belong to a different group. We all belong to different groups. Maybe it's a sports team, maybe it's a work team, um, your own family is your own group. We belong to all sorts of different ones. There's not one that's better than the other, but we kind of define ourselves by being a part of that group. And the different groups we're in make us feel understood and in different spaces, right? Your sports team might not understand your personal side of things, but they'll understand your sports side of things and vice versa. But they help you feel like that people are there and that people like you, which is something that has struck a chord with me a lot lately as I've been going through this launch of this program of I don't know, do people like me? I don't know. Um but I'm seeing the residual results of saying, yeah, these people like me. These people like are there kind of on the wings, maybe still trying to figure out if they trust me or not and like me or not. Um, there's some that are all in and some that are like, you have great stuff, but like we just don't connect. And that's awesome. And I'm fine with that. And it's been kind of a shape shifting moment of I don't necessarily one's not bad or the other. It's built up my self-esteem and saying I'm confident in my person and I'm confident in who I am and what I'm giving to the world. And it's not for everybody. And I know that there are thousands of coaches um, all all over the world online that you can find, and not one of us is the same. And you're not going to resonate with everybody. You're going to resonate with some you'll be like, there's no way, and some you really will be really, really attracted to, and that's awesome. And so there is space for you in the world, in whatever it is that you do, whatever space that you're in, that there's just no you. So that makes it feel like you're belonging a little bit more to just an overall space, is that you belong in the world and you belong in the groups that you're in. I think that sometimes in the feeling to belong somewhere and find out people that like us, that we are searching so hard and so long to fit into crowds that we may not necessarily fit into. I speak from personal experience that like let's go back circa 2002, 2003. I'm a junior in high school, and like sophomore, junior in high school. And I wanted to just fit in with all of these different groups. I kind of felt like that chameleon. I know I've talked about this a couple of times, but felt like that chameleon. No one really knew who I was. I didn't really know who I was, but I was trying so hard to fit into different places and also stand out at the same time and be kind of that individual, be individualistic. And it worked for a little bit until I was probably about a senior in high school, and I could not get out of high school fast enough. I will be the first to tell you that. I haven't walked back past my high school doors, through those doors. Um, but I by the time I was a senior, I was just kind of I don't fit anywhere and I'm tired of trying to fit somewhere. It if any of you have read my blog or listened to this analogy in the past, I apologize for repeating it, but it bears repeating that sometimes when we're trying to find that feeling of belonging, we're that ball of sugar cookie dough. If you're making sugar cookies and you're trying to take the ball of dough and shove it into the actual cookie cutter, it won't ever work. You'll have missing chunks, missing pieces somewhere, but it won't ever work. And then, but on the flip side, um, if you roll out the dough and put the cookie cutter on the dough, it fits. So that's more of where I've come to on my journey is that I've rolled out the cookie cutter dough and I've put myself into the mold, onto the dough and created that mold around me. And that's where I belong and that's where I fit. And everybody else can join in that in their cookie cutter shape, whatever it is. Um, without feeling like they have to try and fit in my mold because it's hard to fit in somebody else's mold. It's easier to fit in your own mold and creating that mold. So that's where that feeling of belonging comes from is just feeling like you're in your own mold a little bit. And then last on this is the feeling of competence. It's just when we face a challenge and have success in our accomplishments, that promotes self-esteem and gives us the drive to keep moving forward in what we are trying to do. When we face another challenge, we have that kind of back as a in the back of our mind as a motivator saying, I've already done this hard thing, I can do this hard thing type of thing. So quick recap with the 4 parts that make up your self-esteem or your self-confidence, that feeling of security, your identity, the feeling of belonging, and the feeling of competence. When we come back from our quick commercial break, we're going to jump into confidence and self-respect. You are listening to the Mindset Bloomcast with Mallory. I am your host, Mallory McGary. I am the founder and CEO of Beautifully Blooming. You can find me at beautifullyblooming.com or email me at mallory@beautifullyblooming.com. You are listening to the WGSN-DB Going Solo Network, radio and TV and podcasts. #1 internet talk radio station. We're going to cut to a commercial break, but come on back. Hello, hello, and welcome back to the Mindset Bloomcast with Mallory. I am your host, Mallory McGary. I am the CEO and founder of beautifully blooming.com. You can find me at beautifullyblooming.com or email me at mallory@beautifullyblooming.com. You are listening to the WGSN-DB Going Solo Network Radio, TV, and podcast, the #1 internet talk network. And welcome back to our wonderful episode about self-worth. Just a quick recap about what we talked about in the first half of this was just the definition of self-esteem and what that is, and the 4 parts that make up self-esteem and building that up. So now we're in the second half, which is the fun part, I think, a little bit, now that we've got the background, we're going to talk about confidence and self-confidence, and then also self-respect, because those tie into what I believe they tie into your self-worth, in the fact that they can affect you overall and your overall well-being. So jumping into our definition of confidence, and my own personal definition is just feeling comfortable in one's skin and trusting oneself. And I'm slightly close according to the dictionary, but the dictionary definition is the belief in oneself and one's own abilities and trusting yourself. So think of a time when you have been like spot on, high self-confidence, nothing could nothing could tear you down. Maybe you're wearing your favorite shoes, maybe you're wearing like your favorite outfit, or you just woke up that morning knowing, like, crushing your morning routine, and you knew it was going to be a great day. I know that happens to me sometimes when I crush my morning routine and I'm like, yeah, I'm going to be productive today. Maybe it was at the end of the day you were able to check everything off your list and it was like, I accomplished the greatest day. And or maybe it's you caught up with somebody, a really good friend, maybe somebody you've lost touch with for a while, but it was like that was awesome and that really boosted what you needed. How to think those feelings of high is what I'm going to call them, kind of that mental high of like, I can do anything. You kind of feel unstoppable in those moments, that nothing will tear you down, that no matter what anybody says or what anybody does, you're not going to be torn apart. Everything is going to be 100% perfect. You're going to be just flying on cloud nine during the day. And I have had those experiences. I love those experiences. And not to say that I haven't had the mediocre experiences where it's like, you know what? I crushed a couple hours and that was awesome. And it boosted my self-esteem a little bit. But I've also had days that it's just kind of like, oh, very mediocre, very blah, very blasé. And it was just kind of didn't increase anything. And I've had days where they were just bad. there there was nothing that bring me out of that spiral. It was just kind of like, I've got to go to bed and like start fresh, start over. And your confidence does rise and fall in with what happens during your days and what's happening around you in your environment. Sometimes I think at this we're kind of the state of the world, that sometimes I like start out on cloud nine and I'm like, yeah, today's a great day. And then maybe you get a piece of news, maybe you get watch the news, read the news, catch up on current events or anything like that. And it just kind of like brings you down a little bit, like, oh, this is not great. This is terrible. Feeling like, oh, there's nothing good in the world anymore at the moment. Someone sometimes can feel that way, and then boosting back up with maybe being productive and kind of going through that ebb and flow. But overall, it's not affecting your total self-confidence and what that looks like. And it's going to be the defining point of, this is the state of the world is not the way that I'm going to view myself, right? In that, and boosting up that self-esteem. And from what I have seen in the space around me as well, is that according to my research and everything that I found, is that according to the American Psychological Association, having high self esteem is key to positive mental health and well being. So think about the mental health right now. Um, I feel that the last few years, this is my own opinion, that as this global pandemic has taken over and the world events have kind of come to the fruition where they're at right now, that it's really hard to stay in a positive mental state with so much negativity going on around us, that it feels that one time you get that one positive feeling and moment, that within 5-10 minutes, that you've gotten 90% of negativity or negative thoughts coming back at you. And it's hard to stay positive in moments like that. It's hard to stay in that higher state of that self-confidence, going, why I can't stay here, because it's so, and that emotional mental well-being of everything in the world is so negative, that it's easier to turn your lens into seeing negative things rather than the positive things and the silver linings that are out there. But also, according to that same study, that high self-esteem matters because it helps you develop coping skills, handle adversity, and put the negative into perspective. So with that, of being able to have those feelings of saying, okay, I have all of these, like, great things going on, having that higher state, you're able to cope better with stress and pressure, wherever that comes from. Maybe you have pressure at work, maybe you have pressure at school, or in at your home. Maybe it's your peers that you have pressure from. You have the ability to cope with that a lot better. You also have um, the ability to not put undue focus or blame or self-doubt, hopelessness on the things that you can't control, that or that you're not happy about, right? I'm not necessarily happy that it's snowing outside my house and it's the middle of April. um, but I can't control that. I can look for a silver lining, and there's no blame or anything like that. It's just there. Maybe I have dropped a task at work that I didn't really think about, or forgot to do a small little technical update on my program launch, that instead of saying, start to go, oh, that self doubt and that blame of you're not doing a good job, feeling that from the outside of saying, oh, you're not doing great, then not letting that get um, into my brain, into my cognitive of thinking, I guess, that, yeah, helps me cope a little bit better because I can separate myself from that. And instead of feeling those hopeless feelings, or feeling stuck, or just unworthy as a person in the things that I'm doing, um, I take more of the step forward and saying, how can I change these things, or how can I prove upon these, because I'm not failing, and it's not hopeless, and it's not the worst. It is, how do I improve, because I'm learning and growing as a person. And that is also a uh, kind of a, what's the word I'm looking for? A side effect, there we go, of having high self-esteem. You perceive things differently. You're perceiving them saying, this is not a failure. This is a learning opportunity. This is how I'm growing. And taking those and making them positive experiences. Whereas maybe on that lower self-esteem, you're more likely to become entrenched in those negative feelings. You start to believe what your mind is telling you, that you're taking um, those negative feelings and embodying them. If somebody says that that was a failure of a project, you're taking that and saying that project, not taking that and saying that project failed. It's saying, I failed and I'm a failure. I'm the one that's not doing great. And so having that be where it is and what that looks like, that um, you start to embody those. So having that higher self esteem, it matters, because you are able to overcome a lot more of that stress and anxiety. The American Psychology Association also noted that um, uh, that feeling positive and respectful about yourself, particularly as a child, goes a long way in helping you adapt and adjust to the challenges of life. It helps you in the way of saying, okay, self esteem is I'm going to have better better relationships with my families because I'm going to take those behaviors that are intent on benefiting others, being generous, creating that relationship, strengthening that relationship, maybe being the first person to reach out and do that. Um, it makes it easier to be in a social environment because you are also have those behaviors of I'm going to reach out, I'm going to create this relationship, I'm going to network, I guess, for lack of better terms, with these people because who knows where it's going to go in the long run. So I'm going to create this connection here. It also helps with stress because if you're doing those behaviors of creating those things that make you feel um, safe, feel more loving, and having those supportive community around you, you're going to be able to manage stress more effectively because you know that you have that tribe is overused, but tribe behind you, supporting you, and you're able to lean on them for that extra help. And also, just that higher self esteem boosts just your overall well being. It helps with um, your mental state, emotional state, spiritual state, all of the pillars that life is built on, physical state. Um, you look at life completely different, that it gives you that ability to again find and adapt to those challenging situations and maybe finding the positive in those challenging situations. So where I attribute confidence into those topics is that you have to believe in yourself, that you can do those things, that you have the ability to overcome that. You've got to trust yourself and trust your instinct of saying, I can do blah, because I have done other things that are similar to, so I can go go down this path. If we're relating it back to my story from the beginning of launching this course, that I've launched a couple things before and I can launch this still. It's a different type of hard, but I know I can do it because I've launched something before. And I'm confident in my product. I'm confident in what the transformation is. I know the value of it. And so I'm going to continue giving it and giving that because I trust myself in knowing that it's going to come to pass in fruition and that I'm just learning different ways of communicating its effectiveness, communicating its growth, communicating um, maybe my full value of it, right? And trying to speak to the heart of those that I know it's meant for. Instead of speaking my language, speak their language, right? Type of thing. So with that, coming with that high self-esteem of having being able to cope with those changes, looking at them positively, not getting sucked into the negativity and the negative, uh, I want to say haters and trolls, but like the people that are just not spreading negativity or that are spreading negativity, to just kind of let those go and not embody what that is. And um, trusting that I know exactly what I'm doing because really I know where I'm going, I know what I'm doing, but I need to trust my own process, right? We all need to trust our own process and our own growth in that. And this is not saying that I am always functioning on a super high level of self esteem and self confidence because I would be lying to you if I told you I did. Um, I have highs and lows just like everyone else. I am a person, I am not a robot. I have highs of where I'm feeling like there's nothing that can get me down. I have had lows of like, I don't even know how I'm going to get stuff done. I don't even think I can get anything done. I don't know what that looks like. Um, I also have those moments of just, yeah, like, we made it today. Yeah, nothing great, nothing terrible, like, just pretty status quo. And but I can tell you that along my journey and my process of getting to this point that I am, that I have more higher days than I do the mediocre days, than I do the lower days, because I have learned to function in this higher space. I have learned to let this my self-worth be determined by the things, my own confidence, my own abilities, my own trust in myself, feeling confident and comfortable in the skin I'm in. Sure, I am not society's type of beautiful. I That's my own perception, right? I don't look at myself and say, "Oh, I'm not society's type of beautiful." I'm beautiful. I have my own beauty, but that's what makes me unique and contributes to the world better because I see things and beauty through a completely different lens. That I've had 2 kids. I'm not going to be the most fit person out there. It's a work in progress, but I'm not there yet. Will I ever probably fit in a size 0 pants? No, I have like my hips are wide. I've birthed 2 kids. I've always been that way. I've never fit in a size 0. I will probably never fit in it again, fit in it ever in my life. Does that make me not beautiful? No. Do I have things in my personality that stick out and that are strong? Yes. And I know that. I've had to come to terms with that. I've accept them. Um, I am very much a living embodiment of all things my personality are, uh, and envelops according to every personality test that I've taken. But I know I have strong personality traits and I know that I have weak personality traits. And I can come off very strong and very kind of in your face, not on purpose, but it's just part of my personality. I've come to accept that. There are things that I work on, obviously, to soften that. But does it lower my self esteem? No. It says, I am this person and I have something to give to the world. And again, I'm not everybody's cup of tea. I know that. And that's okay. But I can be friends with a lot of people and help people in maybe networking to something different, someone different, and kind of be a stepping stone in what that looks like for anybody in general, because that's what life is. That's my view of life is we're all here to network and help each other become the best versions of ourselves. So for that, back to all that in a roundabout way is I'm still a human. I still function on high days. I function on low days. I have low days. I have high days. I have mediocre days. But my journey and my mindset work has taught me to function on that higher plane majority of the time rather than sit in the lows. And if I have a low, I don't sit in it for too long. And last but not least, as a really quick wrap up to all of this, is self respect. Your The definition of self respect is holding in regard the dignity of one's character. And how I tie it both all into confidence and your self worth is how much you respect yourself. Do you really trust yourself? Do you really respect the being that you are? Um, do you stand by what you stand by? Uh, for a lack of better terms from a Hamilton line, um, if you don't know what you stand for, what are you going to fall for? And where's that respect? Where's that boundary? And standing up for those things that are important to you. So, thank you so much for being here this week. We talked a lot about self esteem and self worth. My challenge to you is to find what where you are at a scale of 1 to 10 and find the ways to bump it up to a 10 and bump it up to becoming that higher functioning self-esteem where nothing can get you down. You are listening to the Mindset Bloomcast with Mallory. I am your host, Mallory McGary. I am the founder and CEO of beautifully blooming.com. You can find me at beautifullyblooming.com or email me at mallory@beautifullyblooming.com. You are listening to the WGSN Going DB Going Solo Network Radio, TV, and Podcast, the #1 internet talk network. Well, I'm so happy to have you here. Have a wonderful rest of your week, and I'll talk to you guys soon.